Hello and welcome. That's what I'm looking for to our Friday night live show. I have had the day. I don't know about you, Travis. How's your day gone?
Probably a little easier, or at least normal than yours. Sounds like you've been running around a little bit.
I have been fun discoveries and all that. I don't know where I should begin, but
fun can mean so many different things.
Yes, not always good. But I found that all of the batteries in all of the heavy equipment that we own, they're all dead. Probably because it's cold outside and they were just, they were clinging on anyway, barely, but they are well and truly dead. And jump starting a Bobcat when it is not somewhere convenient to do that is a problem. I'll just say that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that happens.
And also they don't make it easy because for some reason this critical item that can die and the excavator was the bigger problem. Because the Bobcat, you just open the back. But the excavator, you have to unscrew stuff to get to the battery. And then I discovered that the battery is a weird battery. So hopefully everybody is plugging in your vehicles to a battery tender if you are living somewhere cool or cold, because that's kind of a pain.
Yeah, or if you have a truck that you don't drive very often, you just disconnect the battery on its own. That's the poor man's battery tender, is just disconnect it.
Well, I would normally say yes, except that we're talking about really dumb pieces of heavy equipment. So there's no draw at all in the excavator. It's only on when the ignition's on, but the battery, the battery's originals 2018, it looks like.
Right.
So the battery was made sometime before that. So it's had a good run. 7-year-old battery,
Yeah, that seems fine.
Yeah.
Disappointing that you are running into it at the moment, but that's okay.
Thanks for tuning in, Kip. We tried, and everybody let us know in the comment section, especially if you're watching this later, what time is best. This time we are trying to follow the data, and according to the YouTubes, this is the optimal time for a live show.
That's what they tell us. So here we are. And a quick shout out to FC Reviews. Hello. I don't know if I'll see you at one of the auto shows this year, but good to hear from you.
So let's move on to Charles here. Charles has an interesting question about the auto shows. We did not go to Chicago this week. I am actually quite happy about that somehow.
And I'm a little bit disappointed, but I understand where you're coming from. When as somebody alluded to the other day, I think we covered that on the podcast. It was one of our 5-star reviews there. They said, Travis is newer to this, and I am. And I have been closest to this breadth of vehicles like every other consumer has, which is at an auto show. And one of the first things you said is, hey, we have this, and this auto show, but they're kind of on their way out.
Yes. And I would say, as someone in the industry, I'm over them, but as a mechanism to finding your next car, I think they're fantastic still. So I'm of two very separate minds on this. I think that auto shows should die a slow and torturous death, but only the auto shows that you and I attend. Like the press part of the auto show makes no sense to me. I think that they should refocus on being a consumer show and being a better consumer show than they are now. Because I think that the problem with auto shows is this forked mission that they've got, basically. They're trying to have the space for the stupid debut where the Jeep breaks through the glass and climbs up some logs and winches itself into whatever, right? And if they had instead used that space for more consumer-facing stuff, I think it would just be better done. I think they could have every trim of Jeep there instead of just the one or two, so the customer could go and say, which one's right for me?
Yeah, it really, again, what my excitement was, oh, I get to see all the new cars. And then it was one of those like peek behind the curtains. It's like, yeah, by the way, we, the journalists, the reviewers, have already seen all of the cars that are getting their debut here on this stage. And I was like, oh,
Yes.
okay. And on one hand, if we're trying to create content and we want to tell you about this vehicle, that cannot happen in any reasonable or attractive or pleasant way if 70 of us have one vehicle and we're all trying to do something with it. But it is convenient as far as timing, because we could go to one place and have a bunch of these things instead of having each of these individual items somewhere else in the country at a different time. So it really is a give and take. But as far as if you want to hear from us about this vehicle, then we should not really be covering it at the auto show.
Exactly. And that's why it's tricky. So this year we did not see the base Wagoneer S, but we already drove the other one.
Right.
Now,
and the base right now, I think it was just yesterday, is the Limited coming out. I don't know how much lower they may go than Limited, but it used to have a couple $1,000.
Single motor.
Yeah.
The thing is, for me, I think I would rather create a better video before or even after the show if I could do it in relatively short order than actually attend the show. And that's the tricky bit. So, I mean, we already saw the Subarus. We saw 3 of them. We filmed all 3 at the same time. Crosstrek Hybrid. We're not breaking any embargoes now. Crosstrek Hybrid, Forester Hybrid, and Forester Wilderness. And we filmed them all the same day. Quite some time ago, actually. Quite a bit before the auto show. And that was fantastic. We had a lot of time to make sure that they were correct. Unfortunately, we also had a lot of time for Subaru to finish their EPA filings and those to be very different than what they shared with us. So that's one bummer.
It happens. It happens, unfortunately. Yeah.
Here's a good question for you. Electrified Light Vehicle says, will Rivian R2 really start at $45K? He has a feeling it will be overpriced. I might agree with him, but we'll see.
I don't think it'll start at 45. I think it'll get to 45. And that's just because of what we have seen. I mean, we just talked about with the Jeep, is that manufacturers, especially with their EVs or EV-focused manufacturers, are really going the Tesla model. They start with the most expensive version first. And honestly, it makes sense. Get the assembly lines up and running, make sure they have their gross margins there so they can keep making the more affordable one. And it's one of those like, oh yeah, I want the R2 to come out right now at $45,000. But Rivian, and this is, it's not crystal ball, but like Rivian wouldn't survive if the first thing it did is produce the cheapest Rivian, because they would not be able to make the money they need to keep going forward with all these other projects. So, if you want that $45,000 R2, awesome. I do think it'll get there or be very, very close. I'm okay giving some wiggle room from, hey, this is what we said it's going to be to this is what it is. But when it's something like the Cybertruck, where it came in way beyond that buffer that I was willing to give it, that's when you go, hey, listen, this is not what you said it would be.
I am trying to think. There have been some options that have faithfully started at the base price. They're few and specific manufacturers. I think Ford's done a pretty good job of that, because Lightning, when it was announced, it came out with the base model. Admittedly, it was really, really basic, but you could actually buy them. And the dealer, when we picked up our Lightning, it was one of the very first ones. They had a base model coming in the very next week that they actually called us up and was like, hey, do you want this one too? And we're like, no. One Lightning is enough for me. Thank you. Hindsight, probably should have bought it and flipped it. But at any rate, didn't.
Different business.
And Hyundai and Kia have actually been really good at bringing the base model immediately. So whether it's the discount thing like the Niro or the Kona EV, which does have a base version, or EV6, et cetera, they've been okay on those. Sometimes I wonder why they bother, because I don't know if anybody buys them and they're a little bit less desirable. Gia has an interesting question here. And this is actually well-timed because we have a Tucson hybrid in the driveway today, actually. The main reason for this is that the Hyundai Kia hybrids have a ratio spread to choose from. Since they have that 6-speed automatic transmission, there are gear ratios designed for highway travel, and this allows the engine to be in a very efficient power band. When we take a look at a Honda hybrid, the fixed ratio they have is really targeted for efficiency around 45 to 55 miles an hour. So not true highway speeds in the US. Their fuel efficiency kind of falls off there. In a Toyota hybrid, their engines generally seem to be more efficient than the Hyundai Kia engines. But when you're on the highway, in the planetary power split setup, I will let you guys Google the animations on this because it's difficult to explain. But essentially, there are two inputs. There's the battery. There's the engine, and then there's an electric motor, and then we have the output to the wheels, and then there are two electric motors and one planetary gear set here. So to function, 80% of the power mechanically goes from engine to wheels, and about 20% in the latest Toyota designs actually has to be generated by MG2 or MG1 and then shifted over to MG2. And that process has loss. So you're going to lose about 20% of the energy. And on a highway, that's going to be more noticeable than some of these other systems where you can have very, very low losses. So the average loss in an automatic transmission is these days less than 5%, theoretically, when they're operating in particular energy ranges or output ranges. And so that's why you have that difference there.
Yeah, and
here's an interesting
it's also
one.
the right tool for the job. I mean, they drive differently.
Mm-hmm.
They work in different situations. If you really are trying to be the person who nails down your specific use case, and I would be 100% guilty of that, these are the things that are good to understand. And these are the questions that Alex is really good at answering.
Mm-hmm. Here's a good one for you, though. Reputation-wise, Hyundai and Kia have been definitely the Cinderella of auto companies.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is the reason?
Investment. It's one of those things where we're seeing this with other manufacturers. There's a question earlier, I'm sure we'll cover it at some point, talking about Nissan. And when you are a manufacturer and you're in a position that is less than ideal, you have to do something about it. But the problem is, if you are trying to sell cars and you don't have a great reputation, people are likely not to buy your cars, which is going to mean you have less money to then make better cars. It is, it's a vicious cycle, right? And it's usually cycled down. But Kia and Hyundai have money. They are putting it behind their products. They are doing refreshes. They are doing overhauls. They are doing new models. And there's something they've been working really hard at the last couple of years. It's probably about, like I said, about a 10-year climb to really start making that headway, but they're doing it. And I think one of the big things they've done right now, which, things are slowing down a little bit, but they've got a really good jumpstart on electric vehicles. So, and not just electric vehicles, but a good electric vehicle. And they're able to share that platform and that data and those hardware between Kia, Hyundai, Genesis. I'd say it's a meteoric rise. And it's one thing that I think we've talked about. We really do our best to be non-biased in these things. But if you go, I love this CRV. How do you feel about the RAV4? I'd be like, maybe look at a Tucson or a Sportage. I mean, like it's one of those things that these vehicles have inserted themselves into the conversation. We're not doing it. We are just telling you, here's where things are at. So huge push forward. And what I love about them right now is that they have good internal combustion powertrains. They've got plug-in hybrid options. They've got full EVs. They've got regular hybrids. They have just about everything covered. It's impressive.
Yeah, I think that some of the benefit, and I've talked about this before, so I won't belabor the point. You guys can do your own web researching, I guess. Hopefully I can raise my seat here so I can see myself over this thing. There are a number of factors in the Hyundai rise, and I will say we have to separate a bit because Kia's late to the party. Kia was a separate company. That was bad. The Kia thing, there were some bad cars. They went bankrupt
a little bit before my time.
Yeah, I don't remember where it was officially bankrupt or essentially bankrupt, but Hyundai, the South Korean government was like, hey, Hyundai, you got to fix this thing because we cannot have one of our car companies imploding. And so Hyundai basically bought them and fixed them. And The odd thing with Hyundai is that Hyundai is a very young car company, and that's the big thing. I don't think they had some of the baggage that other car companies had because they're very, very new to this thing. They designed their first car in my lifetime themselves because they licensed car designs from other car companies for their very first cars. Then they licensed platforms and adjusted styling and things. They designed their very first internal engine family themselves in the last decade. So it's been very, very recent. Yeah. So when you think about that, it's different than a Toyota or a Honda or Stellantis, Ford, et cetera, that have been around for almost 100 years, some of them. Honda's, on the young side, but still significantly older than Hyundai. They'd had some joint ventures, alliances designing engines previously. The GEM engine that was designed in coordination with Chrysler, for instance. So, they designed a third of that engine because they were a third of the triad. But on their own, designing their own engine families, it's actually very, very recent. The big thing with Hyundai is that they're the conglomerate that decided to start making cars. So it would be as if a General Electric, which is probably the closest corollary, is if General Electric in their heyday suddenly decided they wanted to make cars, and they started doing that because the Hyundai conglomerate's into everything, shipping and mining and steel and heavy industry and like all the things. So the car side of Hyundai is actually a very, very small part of Hyundai.
But it helps when you have so many pieces that you can leverage. If you're looking at supply chains and that sort of thing, certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Here's an interesting one. How does Defender stack up in today's marketplace? Talking R1S, Land Cruiser, Bronco, G-Wagon, etc.
We talked about this a little bit when we were looking at the LX, right? I mean, that's going to be in that market. Now, when we're talking about Land Cruiser, do you mean the current Toyota Land Cruiser in North America, or do you mean the global Land Cruiser, which in North America is the LX?
With these, I'd go our Land Cruiser because we're talking. My camera's in the way, but we're talking Bronco, 4Runner, R1S, solid North American models. So yeah.
I think I think there's a pretty impressive variety. That's kind of what I would say. Of that stack, I'm probably not leaning towards the Defender. Nothing against it. It's just probably not quite my style. It doesn't mean I don't like it, but as far as like would I buy it, I would go a different direction. For me, it would be between R1S or a Land Cruiser. But I don't think, they don't need to sell a lot of Defenders to keep making Defenders. So the market who loves them is going to keep coming back to them as long as they are competitive. What they're not doing is cutting down to very small turbo engines and that sort of thing. Like there's going to be some differentiator. Obviously, when you come to equipment packaging, you can get more in a Defender than you can get in a Land Cruiser. So it's there, and I don't think it's going to disappear anytime soon. And I don't think Jaguar is going to go ahead and make a specific replacement or competitor to it. So, it'll be all right.
Yeah, Jaguar's path is separate, but I would say Defender, just sort of sizing up the options here. Defender's interesting because you can get a small, medium, large Defender. So you can do two-door, 4-door, and 3-row. The big 3-row. Because the mid one also can have a 3-row. But Defender's less Defendery than it ever has been before. So Defender is actually quite different versus Bronco and G-Wagon and Land Cruiser because those are all body on frame. R1S is kind of this nebulous in between because it's almost body on frame. It's if there ever was an in between, that is the only thing. It has a separate frame, but it is glued and bolted to the body. So you could take them apart and drive the frame along with the battery and the motors and all that, because that is one separate piece. But then they actually bond structurally the body on top. Whereas in a Land Cruiser, a Bronco, 4Runner, G-Wagon, there's actually isolation between the body and the frame. So the two are connected, but they're connected with big rubber isolators. So you don't get the chattering from the suspension and things like that into the body. This leads to a disconnected feel, generally speaking, which is why body on frame has fallen out of favor in the 21st century, especially because you rotate the steering wheel and the frame goes somewhere, and then a moment later the body goes somewhere, and then a little while later your seat goes somewhere. So there is the sort of the wooden snake thing, the wooden snake toys when you were a kid. It's kind of like that. It's kind of takes a while for things to move along. Whereas in a unibody car, you just have the seat, so like everything goes together all as one.
Right.
I like the Defender a lot. I do have a soft spot for Land Cruiser. I hope that we accurately in videos always try and at least highlight our internal preferences and biases, because we all have them, right? And I have a soft spot for Jaguar Land Rover. I've owned 2 Jaguars. I could never do the Land Rover though, because my Jaguars were broken enough for me. So I didn't need the additional pain.
You got enough of the experience.
And there was a lot of pain. It's
You mean
apparently,
it was a unique ownership experience?
Yeah. Apparently, automotive-wise, apparently I'm into pain, because I would do another Jaguar tomorrow if the right one appeared. Not a modern one, because that they're dead to me. But
whatever that means, yeah.
A 2000 to 2008 maybe Jaguar XJ, like yes, all day long, twice on Sundays.
The only one that would tempt me would be an F-Type. That's
okay. They were okay. It was too modern. That was too modern Jaguar for me somehow.
So we had a quick question that I wanted to ask you about. Came through the chat here, and it was about if we ever thought about merging with our friend Sophion at Redline Reviews. And the way I look at it is, would we do a hostile takeover of Redline Reviews? I just want to get your take on that one.
No, that would not work. Hostile takeovers get hostile fast, and I would be lying if I had said that the thought never occurred to me. I don't know how it would work, but I have thought that,
but not in a bad way.
No, I mean I've thought that having voices that are differing would be good, and this is where maybe I would say I don't know if Sophion's voice and my voice on cars, our opinions are different enough to make it work that way. I think maybe it's wrong in my brain, but I would want conflict on camera. I would want well, not like fisticuffs, but I would want more divergence of opinion. And Sophie and I will bicker when we drive together on minutia. Like, I don't like that button. That button's fine. But we still like the car, right? So it's that level.
Yeah, and for folks who don't know, it is behind the scenes. A lot of these folks you see looking at the same car in the same place, we do know each other, and more often than not get along. So Sophian's a good friend. Yep. We had someone ask a little while ago about TFL. It's a fun group. I would pay, however, I think to do a celebrity boxing match between Alex and Sophian. That one could be interesting.
No, Sophian would kick my ass. That would not be good. That would be very embarrassing.
Well, I mean, we get you in like sock and boppers. We're not trying to really hurt anyone.
Okay.
For a fundraiser, have a good time.
Sophian goes to the gym. Does it look like I go to a gym?
Oh, goodness.
This temple does not go to a gym. It does many things. Besides, I need to live to see my grandchildren. And since my embryo is, well, I think it's actually a fetus technically now. My fetus is 23 weeks old, something like that. Not even a child yet. So,
days. Yeah.
Gotta make sure I live long enough for that. That's all that gets me.
I'm just saying,
like,
I think it'd be interesting. And I'm probably not the only one.
I gotta live a solid 30 years, because I'm gonna bet that it's gonna require a decade of guilting my children into grandchildren. I don't know, but I have a strong grandchild desire.
Yep, that's true.
Travis can verify this because it is a frequent topic on drives. Anyway,
it is a constant motivator. Yes. Yeah.
AP says, do we think manufacturers will put additional subsidies once the credit is eliminated? I I don't think so.
No, the only reason you would do it is if you are in direct competition with some vehicle that still had it. And that if it's gone, then it's gone, right? Obviously, right now, there are very few electric vehicles who do qualify for that tax credit. And so you are still seeing some subsidies from the manufacturers who don't. And it's just to stay competitive. A lot of that ends up on lease deals. But if it goes away, no, I don't think anyone's going to rush to it. I do think you might see some price adjustments. But I don't think there would be subsidies. I think it would say, hey, listen, to keep these things moving at the moment, we need to make a price reduction or some other form of adjustment. But it'd be more widespread, not just a sale.
Right. And I will say the question is currently extraordinarily complicated because we have vehicles like General Motors Ultium family of cars, which are widely lampooned for being bloated, heavy, all of those things, which are true. Like we have the Blazer EV that we leased for 2 years, and it is heavy. That is a big, heavy thing. But it's also a big, comfy EV that's actually pretty easy to live with. And it is apparently profitable now. So,
yes,
well, we might make fun of... Right. So while we might make fun of General Motors for making some of the decisions they made, clearly those decisions were actually made with profit in mind. And I am surprised by that because they have made so many different variants of Ultium that I expected those costs to just accelerate out of control and not be profitable. But it could be some of the decisions they made around this extreme commonality of components. So the battery modules are all common. They didn't use any exotic materials. That Blazer is all heavy steel. There's no aluminum going on. There's nothing lightweighting about this thing, right? And that probably
it's like the
did
town
help
car
the cost.
concept. We're not going for a featherweight. We're just going, listen, here's what this is. Enjoy it. And Americans still do. So that works out. Now, on their strategy, huge investment. Honestly, pretty big risk because they were going a different direction than everyone else. So on that end, I'm glad to see that it's worked out. Not because I'm rooting for GM, but I like seeing different things play out. And it's there, and so everything should get less expensive down the line. That's how things tend to work.
But contemplate this profitability statement from GM, and then balance that against the discounts on Blazer. Oh my God, $20,000 off a Blazer EV is totally normal. And they're making money on that thing still.
Yeah.
So it could be possible. But I will say the future is uncertain. For 2025, a lot of EVs have lost their credit. Actually, almost all of them have lost their credit with very limited exceptions. The Fords, Ford Lightning, but not Mach-E, as I recall. I might get that wrong. The General Motors, the GM Ultiums, solid. GM was really planning ahead. The Hyundai and Genesis EVs lost their tax credit. The Rivians lost the tax credit. Anything that's over $80,000, which is a lot of them, never got it to begin with. So they're all out. So all the Rivians basically either priced out or out by battery sourcing, most likely. Either way, all out. You cannot get a 3-row Model X, too expensive. Every plug-in hybrid except the Pacifica.
Sort of thing.
Right. Every plug-in hybrid except the Pacifica lost the tax credit. Wagoneer's not going to get it. Yeah. So lots lost, but there is the leasing loophole. And that is the one part where I would say if there's going to be a loophole that will continue, it's probably going to be this one just through this next Congress. And I would say that's because of the corporate connection. So the reason the leasing loophole exists is that when they passed the tax credit legislation, they did the green tax credit for companies, which was always there before. So if you're a company and you buy an EV, you get a tax credit for this green initiative thing. And that's been around for a while. And that credit was not intended initially to apply to leases, but the law was not well written. And so the way that it was written, any company that buys a car, if it's registered in the name of the company, gets the credit. You don't own the car when you lease it. You're renting it, and you're kind of sort of half on the registration, but you're not, the car's not titled in your name. It's titled in the name of the leasing company. So the leasing company gets the credit. And companies treat these differently. So for instance, General Motors, by and large, not exclusively, but generally speaking, does not reduce your capitalized cost on a lease for an EV. But that Volvo EX30 in the driveway, they did. I was really quite surprised there. So, and Volvo will let you buy out a lease on day one. And so you can avoid all the interest. So if you wanted to buy an EX30 and you want the loophole to get the tax credit on sale and your income exceeds the caps, or it's not made in the US or North America, this one's made in China. It is 100% made in China. Still gets the tax credit because the company bought it, but then you can go and buy it out from the lease and finance it on your own or do whatever. And
it's more paperwork,
presto,
but it's worth
more paperwork.
$7,500. So
right, and the savings not quite $7,500 because there's origination fees and buyout fees, but I think it's about $1,000, solid $6,500 discount.
Still worth my time, probably.
Yeah. So Cindy has a good question here on. She had a few questions here on the Kia versus Hyundai thing. This is kind of an interesting twist, and I would say it is the Hyundai Kia game and divide is difficult to divine.
Yeah, growing up, I understood Hyundai to be the nicer version of Kia in the same sense that Acura is a nicer Honda, or even closer, probably something like GMC is a nicer version of Chevrolet. But at this point, it's kind of a tit for tat. It's just where each individual model comes across. I think, if you're looking at some of the volume vehicles, a lot of that is pretty similar. But I think Hyundai, you can still get a little bit more available. We don't have the EV9 competitor on sale at the moment, but that is going to be, it feels a little bit more premium. But it's a lot closer than I had thought it was. But the reason I think that is because Genesis exists now. And Genesis didn't exist. They were a model, and now they are a brand. So,
yeah, both brands have danced around this for a while, and the mission has changed slightly over time. So if we go back to Kia Stinger days, at that point in time, Kia was definitely trying to be the sporty one. So they had the Stinger, whereas Hyundai did not, because they were already divorcing Genesis. So there was no rear-wheel drive Hyundai anymore, but we had the rear-wheel drive Kia. They had GT and GT line things and sportier styling. The divide was more Chevy Pontiac than Chevy Cadillac for people that are older, maybe. It was never really as firm as Acura Honda, I would argue, because they shared so much. Now it's getting confusing because now Hyundai has N, and Hyundai and Kia, they definitely are allowed to fight, and they fight with one another in the conglomerate. But then you have things like, okay, we have EV6, and it's definitely the sportier thing, right? Sportier looking, etc.
Yep.
And then we have EV6 GT, which is the almost 600 horsepower thing. You're like, ooh, that's cool.
Plenty. You're like, this is great.
And then Hyundai is like, oh, hang on, that's not an N. And the Hyundai people were very spicy, and we're these Kia people, they think they're all hot. Well, we have an N, a real N coming up. And so then Hyundai creates a Ioniq 5N, and then we're apparently going to be getting some of those N modifications in the EV6 GT redone. So difference, moved away.
Yeah.
Then we get a EV9 GT, and we don't have an Ioniq 9N. And rumor mill says we are never going to get an Ioniq 9N because that would just be stupid.
I think that's probably okay. Yeah, but we are getting things like a Lyric V, so that's happening. Yeah.
Where they go is I'm curious to see, because the chairman of Hyundai famously I can't remember the exact phrase they've used in the translation here, but it's something like, big brother, big sister, big brother, little sister, whatever they call them. Like it's like Hyundai and Kia are siblings, and he likes it if they fight. So they have their headquarters like across the freeway from one another in Seoul, and unlike GM in the 90s, and maybe this is why I think that their products have actually both gotten so much better once Hyundai bought Kia effectively, is that it's not that competition is discouraged or allowed. It's almost actively encouraged. It's like they like the competition inside. And I would agree it makes it better.
Yeah. We do not see that in other brands. And the best example I have is right at the moment, it's the Chevy GMC Cadillac. And I was in a nearly $100,000 Suburban high country top tier in the back seat, and I went and looked for a window shade, which I thought was like a really normal thing, and it wasn't there, but it would have been on the next model. Not the high. You could go the highest trim on that Suburban. It wasn't there. You had to go to a different brand to get that, and that really feels like an artificial step system, right? It's like, oh, you want that? Well, obviously, I want a rear shade. This is a Suburban. I'm going to have people back here. It seems to make sense. I bought the most expensive one. Where is it? Oh, it's on the GMC or the Cadillac. And I don't remember which at this point, but probably on the GMC.
Yeah, that's GM does try to draw artificial lines in between things. I think Hyundai and Kia have moved away from this a little bit as their volume has increased. But I think one thing that they did really well 10 years ago, I would say in the beginning of their rise, is choosing which corners to cut really well. And that sounds bad. And whenever I talk to the PR people, they're like, oh, I wish you wouldn't say that. But it's true. Every car company has to cut corners. It's a matter of which corner are you cutting and how obvious is it to the driver, the passengers, etc., that some part is cheaper than the other. And the answer often for Hyundai and Kia has been that plastics further away from the driver will get dramatically cheesier, but they will spend the extra cash on the plastics closer to the driver, or they will mix up things in other markets. So if, like in the Forte, before it became the K4, in the Forte, if you bought a Forte in the US, it was very different than the Forte in South America, because in South America, they had much cheaper interior plastics and this and that. But Kia still wanted to have a very inexpensive, affordable model in the US. So what they did was they mixed and matched these parts. So they took some pieces from South America and some bits from North America, and they jammed them into the same car. And so there was this discordant nature about it, but it also allowed them to have this very cheap car and have a more normal level car for other people. So, and other car companies just don't do well at choosing these things. Classically, General Motors has had a very hit and miss strategy for this. And this, I think, is more down to options. So the more standalone options you have in a vehicle, the more expensive that vehicle actually is to build and to maintain. Because the cost of a car is not just the designing and building it, it's the inventory and the warranty parts inventory and marketing the different trim levels and all of that. Everything goes into that.
Yeah,
exactly. It's a big problem, which is why you often hear companies saying they're reducing model lines, etc. Well, the Koreans just never did it in the first place. They never had this explosion of trims, this trim creep that we see in other things. Which is a real problem for like half-ton trucks. There's so many options on those things.
Well, even I'm trying to think, a couple weeks ago, I think the 4Runner has like 9 trim levels, and I was like, for what?
Yeah,
that sounds like a package, and those trims have packages, and it's astonishing, really.
And I would argue that's because 21st century Toyota is the General Motors of the 1980s.
Okay.
They're
before my time, but I'll take your word for it.
They're doing they're seeing the hurt of foreign competition, but they haven't quite accepted it yet. They have a lot of model and feature creep, and they're starting to have some reliability issues that are cropping up here and there. I think it's totally in their power to fix it, but I think it's very un-Japanese to try and fix it, which I think goes with Amit's question here, which is, why do German cars feel so intuitive and good to drive over the reliable Japanese cars? I'll let you try first. Let's see what you think.
Well, they kind of have more going on. I mean, this is kind of the cost cutting, right? So if you're looking at model to model, and let's say you're looking at a BMW and a Lexus sedan, right? They've done different things, and chances are that BMW has more components in it than the Lexus does, and just by nature, you know, again, a lot of these components come from the same place. The same manufacturers build them, create them, but you just leave more room for things to go wrong. I think that's going to be a big piece of that puzzle. It's not all of it, but that's a big piece of it.
Yep. And it is interesting because the German car companies will invest in more complex mechanicals, which are inherently less reliable. So take a multi-link suspension versus a McPherson strut suspension. Inherently, a multi-link with double wishbone type suspension can never be as reliable, meaning as squeak-free, as rattle-free, longer term, as a McPherson strut suspension, because it's simply more complicated. And this is largely why Honda doesn't do it much. Pardon me. Honda really doesn't do it anymore. Honda used to be known for double wishbones and things. They decided to kill them because that was kind of a complaint of some Hondas that had double wishbones. They got rattly over time.
Right.
And so Lexus will do double wishbones in some of their lineup, but not all of them. And you really don't see them in the Toyota lineup. But in a good double wishbone suspension, regardless of whether the side of the car is loaded or unloaded, or the wheel position is high and low, that's the big thing. It's like the wheel is up in the wheel well, it's down in the wheel well, it's moving up and down in a straight line. Then you have, because of this double wishbone suspension design, you also have the ability to have your steering rack and steering axis co-equal with the suspension axis. So if your suspension is rising up and down, if I can angle the camera, suspension is rising up and down, and your steering axis for turning, if these are co-equal, you have a very direct feel. You could have the opportunity for more feedback into the suspension, into the steering rack rather, and you have less opportunity for torque steer in front-wheel drive vehicles. But it's more expensive to do. It's more expensive to design, more expensive to manufacture, more expensive to warrant longer term, reliability issues, etc. Toyota is a very conservative engineering company. I would argue actually quite like General Motors in that respect as well, because GM is actually a very conservative engineering company. And Toyota prefers design evolution over design revolution, and they also go for a very mainstream focus. They have these occasional deviations into enthusiast lanes, but by and large, Toyota is a very mainstream, focused on the bulk of customers. They want the meat of the bell curve. They don't care as much about the shoulders. And
that's
the
one
Germans,
of the things that guides this path, right? Is because people look to them. And I again, I'm not going to pick models or anything, but if you take the comparable Lexus and the comparable BMW, I don't think people are going to hop out of that BMW and go, oh, that Lexus is way better. But what they do say is that Lexus is close enough to the experience, and I am looking for reliability, which I expect to get in the Lexus. And the reason that it might not be on that same level, and I'm not picking on any manufacturer, but you say, oh, it's close enough, but I want to go with reliability. That's why they're going to lean so heavily into it, and why the other one is going to say, hey, listen, the reason people will go for us and not them is because of that 10/10ths difference. And we don't need the reliability as the main focus. So,
yeah, and I think there are also some other interesting things at play here, because I will say on that front, I'll get back to the Lexus thing in just a moment. But so we have the focus on reliability and that side. I think the other problem for Japanese car companies has been the Japanese generally are not great at software. If they had been, there would be a Japanese alternative to Microsoft, and there wasn't back at that time. So, and some of this is that even inside Japan, they kind of finally admitted, like, we're not good at user interface design software. But also, the Japanese car companies have historically opted for interface development in Japan, not in North America. And that's very recently changed at Toyota. So Toyota, this software version that we finally see in everything in the US, this is the first interface designed in North America for North America. And then when the Japanese saw it, they thought, oh, that looks good. We'll offer it to the other divisions around Toyota for other world markets. Every other market that had a choice chose it over the Japanese software. And then Toyota said, maybe we'll just use it in everything. So now it's in all markets everywhere. And we see Honda, for instance, adopting the Google systems. We see Mazda begrudgingly going, maybe we should have some touchscreens here and there. So there are certain things there. I will say that reliability plays obviously still a role in this, but Lexus does a really good job at driving dynamics when they put their mind to it. And Toyota period does this as well. GR Corolla is absolutely fantastic. Lexus IS is very, very good. I challenge any of you to go to an autocross course, go to a moderately sized track, and drive a BMW 3 Series, an Audi A4, a Mercedes-Benz C-Class, and a Lexus IS back to back. And I bet everybody that everybody out there will prefer the chassis dynamics and the steering feel in the Lexus IS to the others, because that was something that they really, really worked on. I think the problem is BMW realizes that their steering feel and their chassis dynamics need to be good, but it also needs to be fun in the real world. And the IS is not as much fun because it's so much slower than the others. So in the corners, it's faster than a 3 Series, but in the straightaways, it is so much slower that it doesn't matter. And that's the problem, I would say.
Yeah.
Moving on, Mark is asking about LED lights.
Let's see. Oh,
Well, you think about this one. Funtail, do you remember, I won't say names because that seems rude. Do you remember a certain engineer at Subaru that used to work at Ford?
Oh.
Might be too far off.
Perhaps.
But one of their, he's no longer in PR, but one of their engineers used to work for Ford, and his career started as basically a cost-cutting engineer for Ford. So he was responsible for doing things like, I need to re-engineer this component to try and save 5 cents, 10 cents, etc. So I would say yes, it does when you think about how many hundreds of thousands of things this manufacturer is making.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mind it terribly. As an owner, the things that you are going to experience when you look at your vehicle, if you walk up and the lights pop on, what you see and what you are presenting to the world is usually not the turn signal. That is just a small piece that pops on every once in a while. But I do think for folks who are going to be a little bit pickier, that is going to be a discerning factor. Hold on, wait a second. That looks or feels cheap. And if it looks or feels cheap to you, that's going to be your thing, and you're going to go, never mind. But I don't think the majority would probably go that direction. But it is nice when you do see a full set, right? You don't see that cost-cutting measure. Like you said, it happens all the time. Otherwise, vehicles would be abhorrently expensive. But yeah, I don't think I mind it terribly, unless it was some awful weird design. If you had, LED light bars, everything's super sleek, and then you just got this like puddle light situation, that would be the standout. So the design is going to be more important, I think, than the specific component for me. But it happens, and it's maybe not the best.
You missed the key question. Is it red or is it amber?
And I would prefer that it's red. And Alex would always prefer that it's amber.
What?
I don't
You
need
heard
another
you heard
color.
it here first. You heard it
I
here
don't
first.
need-
Travis is dead to me. Travis is dead to me. He's gone. Anybody
This is
that
my last
needs
show,
anybody
everyone.
that
It's
is
been
looking for a
fun.
position, apply down below. Travis is dead to me. The amber turn signal.
It's about the colors, and when you look at the vehicle, I understand
It's about
more
safety.
recognizable.
It's about safety.
If the light is blinking, I notice it. So
See,
I'm not too worried about it.
Safety, everybody.
But manufacturers don't seem to agree with you, and nor do regulations. Otherwise, it would be a regulation in the United States.
Matthew doesn't think you're crazy.
He's not the first. It's happened before.
It is. I'm just going to keep on clicking these things because they're great.
Yeah, I know you are.
They're great. 100%. See, safeties.
I understand and recognize that it is about safety. I don't like the way it looks. I've never made a vehicle decision.
Better. They're beautiful, beautiful amber
based on turn signal colors, and I probably
beautiful amber turn signals.
I'm just saying they don't look as good. And if you've got
you want to be in the red light district,
gray car, whatever. Oh boy, now that's for a different show.
We have judgments based on colors in our society. Red stop, literally red stop, or
that's correct.
Or the other red,
or amber.
But usually stop. But usually amber's turn. Yes, amber's caution. Something is going to happen. Also, amber also lets people know that you're not just that dude riding the brake with only one brake light.
That's fair. Although I think more criminal is the General Motors vehicles that when they're in park have their reverse lights on. That is criminal.
I will say
that one.
When I almost didn't believe this, but there's I can't remember the name of the comedian. Someone might know down there, but funniest thing I ever thought of.
By the way, thank you, William, who doesn't know what color his turn signal is, because most people don't, because we don't see them. And it would never influence my decision. I'm just saying they don't look as good.
Oh, see, someone even wants your tail lights for his XC60. Yes, exactly. We'll get to that in a second, though, because there's a tail on that one. But anyway, comedian I used to listen to, I haven't heard him in a long time. It's had this funny routine about driving in India. And I thought to myself, this is, whatever. It's fun. It was funny, but it didn't get me until I was in Egypt. And then I got it. Because the line from his comedy routine is like, in America and in Europe, there's so many, it's so normal. There's nothing out of the ordinary happening. You see one light coming towards you, you think, oh, that's a motorcycle. Maybe it's a car without a headlight. But in India, maybe it's two motorcycles with a bookcase strapped between them and stuff piled on top of the bookcase, and only one of the motorcycles has a headlight. And that is totally what you see in Egypt too. But I digressed. And on the taillight thing, it's a clarity thing, because if you see that one light and it's blinking, is the person riding their brake or are they turning? But if it was amber, you would know.
You wouldn't have to think about it. I get it. I get it. I'm not saying it's not safer. I'm just saying if I look at a turn signal, I go, oh, that one's nicer because everything is uniform.
So, Drew, I hate to throw people under the bus, but I will say that Kyle's a little too immature. It's probably the right word for my tastes, because he does a lot of things on camera that you just shouldn't do. And if you do it, you shouldn't do it on camera where there's video evidence of you doing it. And he has damaged and destroyed press vehicles for no good reason, and I will probably just leave it there.
And I don't know if we need any more contrarian than apparently the contrarian I am here in the red
with the turn signals.
Yeah,
it's William. He doesn't even know what colors turn signals are. How evil! What?
I don't care.
No, William. William doesn't know what color his turn signals are. Like, my goodness. How would you not know?
I don't know what mine are off the top of my head.
So, fun story
have to
on
look.
XC60 and XC90. So, Volvo had been known. I can't find this comment back here, but someone was asking about the
Swapping
Euro
Euro lights.
signals.
Yep.
Yeah, swapping Euro lights on the XCs. So it's kind of funny. Car companies follow design trends in interesting ways. So the funny part of this is that a lot of manufacturers go to design shows, just external events, and then they find things that they like, and that's why we see design themes coalescing on vehicles. They're also pitched on interior elements by suppliers. So, for instance, this year we see the Cadillac Optic with this weird recycled newspaper trim instead of wood, and it's got you could see the letters through the different layers, and it's cut at an angle. Mm-hmm. And we also see that in Optic, and we see that in some Hyundai Genesis models. And Genesis, when they were unveiling it, and the Korean designer was there at talking about it, I was like, "Are you using the same supplier as Cadillac?" Because they, literally the day before, still under embargo, the day before, mm-hmm. Cadillac said they were doing it, and it was like showing up at a party with the same dress that someone else has on. Like, the look on her eyes was like, but that happens because themes coalesce. And then, yep. Then there are style themes that go through because one manufacturer trend sets, and then everybody realizes that you have to follow the trend in a way. Yep. So the XC60 and XC90 taillights, that's where we're going back to. That is one of those things which is funny. So in the 90s and 2000s, definitely 2000s, Audi was the shit, right? Do you remember? Like, everybody wanted an Audi.
Yeah.
And that's when they started doing the whole progressive turn signal thing. You know, they started the little blinky lights.
Love. Yep.
Which are quote unquote legal in the US, but America has different lighting laws. So Canada and the US follow the FMVSS and the Canadian equivalent, which is harmonized with us, lighting laws, so that cars can be sold on both sides of the border. But largely driven by the FMVSS, the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard thing. Yep. And this specifies that lights, like turn signals, must have a specific number of square inches for it to be a turn signal. So, and this is why we see red lights in some European vehicles. So they may be amber some markets. They come to the US, they turn red, because a turn signal and a brake light have to be a specific size so that you can see them and know that something is happening. Well, these really slim lights that Audi was doing in this generation of 2000s cars especially, they were too small. The amber elements were too small to qualify as a turn signal in North America. So what Audi did was they combined the turn signal and brake light portion in the housing, turned the turn signal red, and then used it for brake and turn signal. It was then the right area to be a turn signal and a brake light. Well, Volvo did not have this problem, but because Audi was so hot at the time, and lots of manufacturers were like, ooh, the MMI thing's cool, the Disco Dash is cool, the lights are cool, this is cool, that's cool. So BMW and Audi, or BMW and Mercedes even, started following along this style trend. But Volvo, kind of the tertiary European brand, being totally honest, love me some Volvo, but they're not there with BMW and Audi in America. Volvo's designers, I kid you not, I had this very long discussion with them at the launch of the XC90 when it launched in 2016 in the US. The reason they gave for why they had red turn signals was Audi. That literally said that.
But you normally do not get that sort of admittance that directly. Yeah. So
they said that in their customer surveys of luxury segment intenders for XC90 and adjacent, that customer base was really grooving on Audi's design, and Audi had red turn signals, and therefore they went that direction. This caused me to ask the designer, do you know why Audi has red turn signals in America? And he did not know.
Yep.
He did not know that it was because of the dimension of the turn signal lamp module.
It's not his job to know why. He just knows people like it.
Mm-hmm.
What I heard
really
is
interesting.
Red turn signals. That's what I heard. I don't see what the issue is.
Some could. What I hate are thinner backlights so you can barely see. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Now, before we get too far out of it, I think we had it up on screen for just a moment, but I want to make sure we didn't miss Jasmine's comment. Do you mind pulling that one back up for just a second?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't see a Jasmine comment, but we have to get back to this one. Oh, dude, did we miss a super chat?
We did. We had it on screen, but we didn't get to it.
Oh.
Promise.
My bad. Congrats. There we go.
Yeah, so thank you, Jasmine. And just a quick tidbit for those who don't know, we reached this week 1 million subscribers. And Alex, I went back and looked, and the first video that I was ever in that went live, I think we put it on both channels, EV Buyer's Guide and Auto Buyer's Guide, was in September of 2023, where we had about 485,000 subscribers. And it has been a steep climb in the last 6 or so odd months. So congratulations on 1 million. Great to be part of it. But man, what a ride.
But mostly, to be perfectly honest, thanks to everybody that's watching and subscribing, because literally we wouldn't have 1 million subscribers if it wasn't for 1 million of all of these subscribers. We need at least 1 million
people to say this is worth subscribing to. Yeah.
Yes. And you would assume I would have dressed better for this, but I was working in the yard, and then I looked at my watch and realized, oh no,
I was about to have
things
to call
are
him.
Supposed to happen.
But that's why you guys tune in, because Alex is Alex, and that's how I was gonna look back on when I first subscribed to the channel, but I did not quite get that.
Matthew credits it to my stylish new haircut, which has been my stylish haircut for about 30 years. So, no,
I've also had the same haircut for a very long time, and no one comments on my stylish haircut.
Did you decide on your stylish haircut when you got to decide how short your hair was?
So I swam growing up, and it was a matter of not wanting to deal with chlorine all the time. And then I went, oh, this is great. I really enjoy this. But just before the pandemic started, the timing was perfect. I said, I'm going to grow my hair out. And so for
I saw that. Years, it was not right.
I grew my hair out, and it was down to my shoulders, and it was super curly, and it mostly existed in a ponytail. And I went, you know what? This is okay, but it's not better. And if it's not better, it's certainly not worth the effort. So back down.
I'm hair judgy internally.
Yeah, internally.
So I will say, in this process of meeting you, etc., initially on the long hair, because there was some picture or something on the long hair, and I'm like, I am going to have to try and quiet my inner judging on
especially
this.
Just getting to know me, yeah,
and just go, you know what, there's a person under all that hair. But then you had the next time the hair was very short, and I was like, it's a better fit. It's a better fit. There are very few pictures that exist of that hair, and at some point it's just going to be shaved all the way down because I'm not necessarily winning that hair battle. But that's okay. I don't mind it. It's just where we're at in life. I am a child of the 70s, so I am constantly trying to fight that programming, and sometimes it works better than others. Sure. I will say that when I was a child, the hair had to have a specific look, and my mom cut the hair in the family, and everybody had to have their haircut, and the haircut was decided for us, and the haircut timing was decided for us. So we did not have a choice in any of this. And there was the part on the side, and it was all over the top. So the moment that I could decide on my own haircut, I was like, cut it all off. remove it. That's the thing. So people are having some streaming issues. So hopefully, but I'm seeing you and you're seeing me, and
I'm seeing
our
you.
stream
So
health.
I think we're okay. Yeah.
Our stream health seems good.
People always wanted my hair longer. They said, grow it out, grow it out. I said, I don't want to. My rule of thumb is if I woke up and had to comb my hair, I went and got a haircut that day. It was a perfect system. I loved it.
I am looking at our stream health here, and apparently our stream health is excellent. So I do apologize if anybody is having any issues, but
sorry, folks.
You know, the interwebs are a fun thing that doesn't always work.
We are at their
This
mercy.
is a good one. Have we seen videos from Korea on the new Palisade, on the design, and not everybody is a fan? I actually kind of think I am okay with it. Are you okay with it?
I don't know if I've seen it.
I will pull up a picture here, and maybe we can share this with everybody.
Yeah,
it's there's a lot of Gillette going on. That is a multi-blade razor if I ever saw one.
Okay.
But I actually kind of dig it.
I want to make sure we're looking at the same picture, so I'll wait just a moment before you get yours up. But I'm looking at basically these spy photos.
I think it's out now. I think let's see if I can find Hyundai's global newsroom here. But okay. I believe it is out, because oftentimes with the Korean companies, I should say, like, they won't say it's coming to America yet. We all know it's coming. But then they will full on launch it in Korea, and then we get it later. And I think this might be one of those.
Okay.
That's just the regular Hyundai website. People can Google it, but yeah, it is. Because there's already car scene Korea, etc. already has a video out on it.
The grill maybe not my favorite, but I think I like the rest of the shape better than the old Palisade.
I don't mean to shill another channel here, but I got to show everybody this. So let's can I share my screen here? Let's see if this works here. Oh, maybe I can't. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Look, see, there you go. Car scene Korea. Thanks, guys, for doing this. Lotta Grill. The interior is not very changed, but this is what we're going to get in America, because they are not making another Palisade for us. So basically the same seats. The interior very different than we get now. It's a little bit of Santa Fe and of course get those 4 dots there. That's kind of cool.
That's a fun transition. I like they're going that direction.
The whole storage shelf on that side, that's a bulky dashboard. I'm hoping that I get to see one when I'm in Korea in a few weeks, because I think that would be all kinds of fantastic. I'm going to be checking out a few other things while I'm there. I'm going to visit some friends, and so I was able to borrow a car, but we'll see how this goes. Like, the exterior styling is interesting, because you can see they didn't just give it a new nose; they changed sheet metal on this. So they have that quarter panel that like kinks up the side. Really interesting changes.
Especially those wheel arches. They look pretty squared off. I like it, and again, this is your competitor to the Telluride.
Here we go. There's the back.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. I think it's done a better job of differentiating itself from the Telluride, and I think that's probably not a bad thing.
But you know what this means? No. We're probably going to see a refreshed Telluride soon, because this is much more dramatic of a change than Telluride has had so far.
Yeah.
At least it's not high-waisted on the back.
Yeah, and that's honestly the only thing that gets me on that Santa Fe is the weird just dimensions and spacing on that sort of thing.
I don't know if we're going to get these seats in the US, but that is curious, because that's a lot of seat adjustment for a mainstream vehicle. And I will say that we go back to some of these other shots
to do it, and that is a nice thing to see, instead of less buttons to do the same thing.
I will say this is a complicated door panel to do. Like if we're just talking about design and manufacturing, this is a high-end complicated panel to do because we don't have any normal seams rather for the area around the door handle. So the alignment of these components is critical. The attachment points have to be much more hidden attachment points than we find in a typical door panel in this segment. So I'm curious to see if this is what we actually get. I'm assuming again it is, because generally speaking they don't create different things for different markets.
We don't get a whole
but this
model.
one also has the powered tilt telescopic steering column, kind of a floating center console thing. I'm casually intrigued.
Yeah,
I'll put it that way.
I like the dimensions of it. I like that it's more different than the Telluride, and I think the Palisade has just lost sales to the Telluride. So time to do something a little bit different.
This is an interesting one. Would you buy a Honda Pilot or a Pathfinder now, or assume that they'll get some sort of update for 2026? I will say on the Pilot front, it's unlikely. It's relatively new still, and we all saw the Passport, and Passport's not radically different than Pilot. So we're not going to see an enormous change. I would say likely in the Pilot. It's possible, but I would say it's generally unlikely.
Yeah, I'm more unsure on if I would go buy a Pathfinder in that segment. That's probably not quite the direction I would go in the first place. And I don't have any information on this, but I know Nissan's what we talked about earlier, right? How do you fix a company that's in a downward spiral? You throw a lot of money at it, and that's not something Nissan's going to be able to do right now. So I don't know how much I would count on changing in that Pathfinder.
Yeah, Dennis. So Dennis, on the same subject here, if you're concerned about the third row space, I might suggest checking out some of the larger options. So if you really need to use the third row on a regular basis, and you do want a roomier third row, you will find a big third row headroom wise in the Explorer. So that's definitely larger than the one in the Pathfinder. But the biggest third row and most comfortable third row in that segment is really going to be the GM triplets.
I will say I was surprised how well I fit in the Pilot third row. For folks who don't watch a lot of our videos, I run out of headroom pretty quickly, and that's one that I don't run out of the headroom in. So I was pretty impressed. Yeah,
especially if you're going to be using child seats in a vehicle, depending on your use for the third row, whether it's adults or older children or kids in child seats. The child seat functionality of Traverse, Acadia, and Enclave, right? Am I getting those right? That is definitely better than anything we find in the Honda for sure. Passport does pretty well there with the tilt slide mechanism, but roominess is more the problem there. There's just more room in the GM triplets because they're physically quite a bit bigger.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. I have thought about this, but I'm not clear how we'd go about this. If anybody has any connections, let us know. I would basically have to go to China on my own and rent cars, because interacting with PR departments even outside North America is tricky. So when I go somewhere and if I travel personally for personal travel, I will generally film whatever car I rent just because it seems fun. But this is it's not like that's a tax dodge, because I still pay for the rental car personally. But also getting manufacturers to give us a car that way, we don't have relationships with those PR people, so it's generally doesn't work. We'll see how this goes in Korea, because I'm going to Korea in 2 weeks for a car thing. And while I'm there, I'm going to visit a friend of mine that's in Korea. And so I am borrowing a car, and I did ask if I could film it. So we'll see how that goes. So maybe, but I specifically wanted the one that we don't get in North America. The Chinese EVs, China's a really interesting EV market because it is so all over the map, and they have very traditional manufacturers still teaming up in cooperative joint ventures like Honda and Nissan.
Mhm.
And then they have, all of the various Chinese ground up brands developed there they're doing their own thing. And you got these in between brands in a way for instance, like Geely, where you have their brands that they started, their main brand. They got Volvo, they got this, they got that, and everything in between. It really is an interesting market because it's so fragmented still compared to North America.
Yeah. And again, it's a lot about the relationships, and we just don't have them in that way. So it's not like we can make a call and say, "Hey, here's what we'd like to do." Sometimes we can, but globally that's much more difficult.
Well, this is an interesting one. Your thoughts on an RX hybrid or a Lincoln Nautilus?
Oh,
that's a tricky one for me.
Yeah, I think what I would enjoy driving every day more is probably going to be the Nautilus.
I might agree. There are some geopolitical issues with the Nautilus since it's manufactured in China. That is tricky. I do kind of like, more than I thought I would, the weird 2-screen thing across the dashboard. I think actually works better in person than it did in photos initially.
Yeah.
The one thing I will caution is, if you are thinking that the Nautilus with its hybrid system is more fun than an RX hybrid because it's more powerful, it is more powerful on paper, but it is not quicker in person. So that's the thing.
Yeah, no, I just I will say the screens. We've talked about screens a little bit, and we were in the Jeep with 45. It's not 100, like 45 inches of screen real estate for passenger and driver. If you get the passenger screen, et cetera, et cetera. That felt to me like I was being inundated with screen real estate. But on the Nautilus, I didn't. And obviously, it's an enormous screen. It's all screen, but it was done in a way that was so well integrated. It didn't feel like it was forced upon you.
Yeah.
There are some Toyota screens that are really big, right in your face, and you go, "That's a big screen." That's where it feels like it's overpowering on the screen side of things. This felt really well done, and I was a fan.
And I will say, I think, maybe let me know if you think this way, but I think for me, it's because it's high and away from the driver, and it functions as head-up display, instrument cluster, sort of infotainment system, some auxiliary displays, but it's not trying to be a passenger screen as well. So like in the Stellantis things, that passenger screen they want to stick on everything. I'm just like, why guys?
Which is just a
stop trying to make it happen.
Screen. It goes boom. Here's a screen. That one felt like more often than not, it was mostly just like fading into the background. It was just part of the ambiance. It wasn't active. It wasn't doing a whole lot. You could put the weather up there or something, but it wasn't this big focal point. And that's really what worked for me, is that it's. I don't love heads-up displays personally. So the fact that I had the information out there, I don't.
What?
Listen, this doesn't have to be controversial night for Travis. I'm not a big fan of heads-up displays, especially when you wear sunglasses.
Oh my God, you're really fired now. No amber turn signals, no head-up displays. I mean, what do you hate next? Do you hate V8s now?
Oh, should I not start on that?
Oh no.
No, it's just not my favorite. I like the information being out there.
Do you hate babies and kittens? I mean, what? What?
I'm not a huge baby fan, but kittens are great.
Wow.
No, so I like that the screen is out. It's less looking down, it's more looking up, and it's really well integrated. So that's
just gonna say
where I'm at. Don't worry, you and everyone else. The problem with the heads-up display is when you're wearing sunglasses, you can't see it.
I know who's not getting invited to the sip and see. That's what I know. Someone's sip and see invitation is getting lost in the mail because where are you gonna drop my baby? Is that how this is gonna go? You're gonna be
like this is news to you. Alex is not only a bit kind of guy, but this is not news to him.
What? Babies are where it's at. Babies fill my soul. You know, I knew that the biological clock was real when babies crying on planes no longer made me want to strangle the baby, and instead was making me think, oh my God, that poor baby, what can we do to fix the problem? Like, what is going on with that
How do
poor
we help
baby?
this
Like,
child?
how do I help this helpless child? Like,
Would I be a better parent to this child? Is that what this is? Is that what this means?
what can we do? Is there something? Do you need my seat? Like, what do you need? Like, what can I bring this adorable child? And it didn't matter how loud they cried or anything. Like, I knew that was my moment. So
See, I don't
there's
have
that.
hate for crying babies on airplanes, but it certainly does not stir that.
There's
sort of
hope for you. Yeah,
emotion
we'll
on me.
get you one. What if we got you one? What if we got you the adorable baby of your dreams?
No, I'm good. I think I'm good. Yeah, thank you. It's so very generous of you, and I appreciate it so ever so much.
Lots of babies need good homes. I'm just saying.
You know, there are already lots of babies. I just don't know if
there
I
are
need
lots
to
of
be part of that journey. You know what I mean?
every child needs a safe and loving home. That's how it is. You know,
I'm just not home enough. You know, that's part of the problem, and I can't leave him with the cat. That's not gonna.
That would be wrong. That would be wrong.
Yeah,
that would be wrong.
Right. So
cats don't make good babysitters. You know, every day I pick up my cat and I turn her upside down and stroke her tummy and I tell her, you know, you adorable thing, one day you will be dead to me because I will have a real baby.
And in case anyone's wondering, I have literally seen that happen. It's a very real thing. Yep.
And then I tell the cat, oh, cars. Oh, we're on Cars. Sorry.
Is that what we do? Yeah.
That's not fair. Yeah. Because Travis can attest that it does not require any alcohol at all for me to get off on this topic, which I normally keep very well hidden on the tubes. So we'll.
That's what you get when we go live. You know what I mean?
Sidebar. Yes, it is true that XT5 and XT6 are disappearing. On to the topic the channel's about.
The Blazer was kind of the last one I saw. Kind of an interesting shift. We talked about this, I believe, on our podcast. I don't remember, but we have talked about this on camera somewhere. The removal of the XT5 and XT6 makes sense from a General Motors perspective. I don't know if it makes sense from a Cadillac perspective because they have electric competitors or alternatives in that space already. But when I said was you look at GM or you look at Chevrolet and you have an Equinox and Equinox EV, a Blazer and a Blazer EV, but now it looks like we're going to have the Blazer, not Blazer EV and Blazer. Just it's going to be electric. So I think it makes sense as long as they feel the sales numbers are there. They do have, they have offerings, and as long as people are picking up on that, I do think that electric vehicles lend themselves to a luxury badge in any number of ways. The only thing it's missing is that big guttural, exciting, performance when you get a Cadillac V. I get that, but beyond that, it's instant torque, so easily accessible power. It's a quieter interior. You don't ever have to stop at a gas station. For a lot of folks, that is a luxury feature, assuming you're not doing a bunch of road tripping. So it lends itself that direction. I do think it's a little bit bold, which, just a little bit. But
and I mean, if someone had told you 10 years ago that Cadillac is poised to be the first luxury brand, traditional luxury brand, to go all electric, would you have believed it? I would not.
With those V models, no, that is not. I mean, that's not the
direction. I thought Volvo would be the first. Because Volvo was one of the first ones to say we're going all electric. Genesis said it. Volvo said it. BMW, Mercedes kind of quasi said it. But Cadillac looks like they're going to beat them all.
They're right there. They are right there.
Because they absolutely have the most broad electric lineup in the bunch with, can we even count them? Optic, Vistic. What's the mid-side? The 3-row one? Oh, Lyric. Optic, Lyric, Vistic, Escaladic, which is an Escalade IQ, but we'll call it Nick. And then we have Soleil and Celestic. They're going to have 6 things shortly in their lineup that are electric, and they're killing off some actually good sellers. XT5, not the best seller. XT6, okay, kind of middle of the pack. XT4 is the second best seller in its segment. It's dead.
Yeah. I
what do we got left?
The only thing they're missing, the only thing they're missing is an electric sedan. We don't have that. Well, Celestiq. I mean a smaller one. Sorry, I mean a smaller one.
Nobody buys
small,
them.
small, but smaller. I know. And they're missing a truck, right? We have the Escalade, but we don't have the Escalade EXT, which would be the perfect carryover from the Silverado and the Sierra EVs. They got it mostly covered without branching out too much, because as soon as you start branching out, you lose efficiencies in manufacturing and production costs and that sort of thing. So I think they're in a pretty good spot. And again, these models are now profitable. And I think that was Chevrolet specifically, but that really, to me, that also means that Cadillac is in the same ballpark,
Probably pretty similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy Wee Monkey. This is an interesting point, actually. EU CO2 targets. This makes sense in a way because, and this also ties in with what I repeatedly say about Volvo in North America, because I know a lot of friends that love Volvo, love traditional Volvos. I've owned multiple Volvos in the past. So I love me some Volvos here and there. And I am a little sad about Volvo's direction sometimes. But the important thing to remember about Volvo is that their sales split is very different than the others. And again, this is one of those things where their PR people hate when I say this, but hey, it's the truth. So sorry, guys. If you look at BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Porsche, still, I think for the moment, their biggest market's North America. Lexus, North America. Acura, North America. Infiniti, North America. All the luxury brands, North America is their biggest market. Not so for Volvo. And not only that, but North America is not even their second largest market. The European Union is by far Volvo's largest market. It's China gaining rapidly, then America third. Also, guys, I would tell everybody else out there that's like doing the rah-rah whatever, rapidly, China is going to be the largest market, especially for Porsche. If it's not already, it's going to be very soon, because 2023 rather, the full sales numbers, very close. Porsche expects that China is going to be the largest market for Porsche soon. And intrinsically, this means when you think about their lineup and how they're designed and the design priorities for how vehicles are built, if you're BMW, if you're Land Rover, Mercedes, etc., you're going to design your car for North America. Then you're going to have an adapted version for your second largest market. Substantial change is warranted and budgeted for your second largest market, as long as it's large enough. But then the third largest market, they sort of get what's left, right? And that's what America is for Volvo. So we get what they've designed for other markets that they think might also work for America. They're not designing cars for us. They tried that, didn't work. V8s are dead. They're never coming back for Volvo in North America, ever, anywhere really. And that's what's quirky and interesting in the Volvo lineup, but very different than the others. But I would say that unless, and this is tied with another question that we had earlier, which is, do we think cars are going to get more expensive? I would say unless cars got cheaper, this is the way it's going to go. Like the US market is never going to be the biggest market in the world unless cars get significantly less expensive.
Right, because the only way to sell more cars is to make them more affordable. And it doesn't, and the innovation that you see is not going to be in the model, it's going to be in the production, it's going to be in the willingness of the manufacturer to create a cheaper product. And at this point, what's the incentive to, if you look at the cheapest Lexus, right? That's a very different vehicle than top sellers, your RX, your TX, that sort of thing. It's a very different car. And if that's your first experience with Lexus and you go, I don't like this because it's not the same kind of product, then you won't go back. So there's almost risk involved with making a cheaper car. Yes, it'll bring some more people in, but some of those core buyers might go, oh, my brand is cheaper and I don't like that.
Right. And this is maybe where people are gonna, find our liberal cards, I guess. But I think that the narrowing of the car market is a problem for American society, because when we take a look at who is actually buying new cars, like we've talked about this, Travis and I, on press events. This is a demographic economic problem, because if the average American can't afford a new car, that's kind of a problem. And it's been a long time since the average American could afford a new car. New cars are being purchased by upper income earners, single family home owning suburbanites. If you think that the average American is a farmer that buys a new truck every year, that hasn't, I don't know if that ever happened, but it certainly hasn't happened in any recent memory. People that live in urban areas and rural areas generally do not buy new cars. Like the peak of that bell curve hits squarely on double income suburbanites in their 50s and 60s, high income earning, etc. That's who buys new cars. And I think that's a real problem, because if you have an employee that or a coworker, like say we're maybe I'm outing myself as someone that has employees, because I do, but this is a problem, because if you have an employee and you just want them to get to the office and have reliable transportation, I don't know honestly if I care if that car is made in China, because there's an economic benefit to that employee having reliable transportation that can get them to work, where they don't have where they're not afraid of losing their job because they couldn't get to work. I mean, I'm not going to fire someone because their car broke down, but there are a lot of people that would. There are a lot of jobs where if you don't show up right now, then your job is over. And that is what worries me, I would say, about this situation. Like the era of graduate college, buy a new car, that's over. The era of graduate high school, buy a new car, my lifetime hasn't even included that.
Happens in movies, great. Beyond that, not so much. I think Matthew had a great point. He said people need to start demanding better public transportation. Well, here's the problem there. Where I live in small town USA, all right, small town Southwest Washington, I have a bus stop. Okay, and that bus stop is near the freeway. It's, I don't know, pick a number, 3 miles away, something like that. It's not enormous, but if I do not have a car, I'm not walking that 3 miles probably every day. Plus, where I'm at, it doesn't really work. I have to walk a highway, so that would be tough. So I'm riding my bike to this bus stop. Technically, it's an option, but it doesn't run very frequently because where I'm at, there's not a lot of public transit. And the socioeconomical, makeup of my neighborhood is not incredibly high earners. I live in a fairly inexpensive part of the country. So my neighbors are the ones who need cars. And if they can't afford new cars, then that is just a whole market that disappears.
Yep.
It's a tough one. And there are a lot of big trucks in my neighborhood, but a lot of those are used trucks. And as much as the big three would want to sell you a brand new truck, again, a lot of my neighbors are just not in the space where that's something they're going to either be able to afford or be willing to cut into the budget for.
I like the concept of better public transportation, but I have to admit that it's not always practical or rational for large swaths of America, because we're not an overly urban country, especially where you and I live. I mean, the West Coast is so much less populated than the East Coast. I mean, you look at the density maps. If you were to do a 330-mile drive on the East Coast, you'd be going through a bazillion towns. You can do it in California and not interact with a city over, 5,000 people for hundreds of miles. There's a lot of nothing. And then between you and me, specifically, the north part of California
and the south part of
you
Washington,
you could drive hundreds of miles and not even have a village. I mean, I don't know, not even a hermit and a something.
and
There's
I've done it
nobody
a
up
couple
there.
times.
Yeah, there's nobody
Yeah.
up there. So like I believe in urban transport, but I also am realistic that it's not going to be rational for me. The nearest bus stop that I can think of, not a school bus stop, like an actual
Right.
bus stop,
Don't be going to
is
school bus stops.
1,200 feet of elevation down that way, and quite a ways. Like it would take a day to get there on foot. A bicycle, you could shush downhill much faster.
E-bike,
but you'd have to get back up the hill though.
Yeah, and when
and then you'd be going the wrong way.
And when I was in my 20s, I lived in Seattle, just outside, so not like downtown, but around Seattle. My address was Seattle, and for a while, I didn't own a vehicle within my household. There was a car, but it wasn't like a car per person, and I was using the light rail to get to and from work. That worked out, and light rail is expanding in that area, but people don't want to pay for it. But if they don't want to pay for it, then they better be comfortable with traffic, because I was a car, not on the road. And even to make my trip a little bit easier, because it took some walking to and from, I bought a little electric scooter. So, like standing electric scooter, those are my wheels. And let me tell you, grocery shopping with that was not going to be a thing. That's what I had the car in the household for. But yeah. And by the way, in my 20s, I did own a brand new car at that point, but it was the absolute base model 2016 Mazda 3 is what I had. And again, that's not selling in huge numbers because it's a base model.
Yep. And I will say it's funny for people that have not realized this. I took many languages in school. None of them stuck, but the one I know the most of is Swedish. I took many years of Swedish. I can order things in restaurants in Sweden and understand menus and written signs. But a good friend of mine that lives just outside Stockholm was coming to visit, and she said, I just really want to take public transportation. So, I know we're going to go visit these things. I don't want to drive. I really want to be, lower emissions, etc. And I said, well, that is lovely. That is not going to work. But I will let you decide on the Googles how this will work. And instead of I think she wanted to go to the De Young Museum in San Francisco, and instead of a hour and 20-minute drive without traffic, it turned into like a 6-hour odyssey on the Google public transport thing.
Yeah, just following the list. Yeah,
right. And so even she said, "Okay, never mind." And I was like, "Yeah, that's because we don't live in that kind of place." So, even though she's in Gävle, even though she's in Gävle, which is not exactly that urban, there's still ways to get to buses, to trains, to whatever, to get her into Stockholm to do the thing she needs to do there, and then get her back so she can find her goat on fire. But that's not here. Oh, the Gävle. Yeah. Do you not know the Gävle goat?
I don't know. No.
Every Christmas, this last year didn't catch on fire. So in Gävle, which is north of Stockholm, the Christmas goats are a thing in Sweden. So instead of like reindeer, there actually are reindeer in Sweden. They're wild up there in the Northlands, but it's very common to have goats in Christmas displays. So you have like, instead, like you create wreaths out of greenery, you'll also create goats out of greenery, and they have like this long horn things. And so in Gävle, they also build a huge goat out of straw and sticks and this huge steel infrastructure. And they create this enormous straw goat. And juvenile delinquents set it on fire every year. So it's this huge, like, I don't know.
Predictable.
Like 10-story tall goat. You got to look up the Gävle goat. And every year, without fail, seemingly it catches on fire. But Sweden is a very law-abiding, strict place. So they keep trying to twist the thumb screws down. They're like, no, we cannot have our goat burning before Christmas.
Stop it.
Ever.
Stop it.
Unsafe.
This is why we can't have nice things.
But the sad part is then we can't have a burning goat. And so this last year they stopped it and the goat didn't burn.
So is it really Christmas? You know what I mean?
It's not really Christmas. They had to take it apart.
Yeah.
Then they didn't have a burning goat.
You got to pay people to do that. And it's a whole process. Yeah.
Filled me with sadness. And I mean,
no, it's not fair.
The only thing that could have made it more American in this process is that if it had been tied with a gender reveal.
Yeah. What color the flames are, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. No. Gender reveal gone wrong. It could not have been planned. It would have to be gender reveal. Does
error.
Something, right? Yep. Does something that sends a flaming something into the straw goat. Then it catches on fire. Oh. And made of butter because, hey, if it was a straw goat that was then a butter straw goat, imagine that.
Alex,
and with that, we should probably end the live stream. We have dissected every problem imaginable, so clearly it's time to
Our work
go to
is
bed.
done here.
It is done.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
I probably have to go eat dinner. So
yeah, me too.
See everybody later.
Have a good night and enjoy your weekends.